All right, I reached out to them, but we'll see if they can make it or not. Um, all right, so let's get started. Uh, Not a whole lot going on this week in terms of new PRs. There's a new one from Eric to, I think this just limits the number of shards that are allowed for dynamic resharding in RGW. If I understood that PR correctly from just kind of looking at it quick. Um, And then there is another pull request from Sage that, uh, Josh, this is, I think, what you were looking for in terms of, uh, oh, maybe this isn't. I was thinking this was the thing that prevented the cache from thrashing, but um, it looks like this instead is, oh, okay, so okay, if I understand this correctly, Scrub can do its traversal of Nasus without polluting the onode cache. So maybe this is what you were looking for. Although I don't understand how this works yet. So anyway, Sage is working on stuff to basically pin Bluestar onodes in memory so they won't get trimmed. And then in combination with fadvise don't need or similar, Scrub can do its traversal of the namespace without polluting the onode cache. Well, anyway, Sage is working on that. We've got a couple of updated PRs. Adam's PR for not letting the write ahead logs get like corrupted is here. So it looks like there's new updates. I think Kifu tested that and it didn't work or failed for some reason previously, but hopefully a new version doesn't. More updates for using the priority cache manager for MDS cache memory limit or auto tuning of the MDS cache memory limit. So that's chugging along. Adam rebased his sharding work for me so that I could test it. I've got some updates on that, but yep, that was done. And then basically that was it. I think everything else kind of didn't get a whole lot of updates this week. So are the guys from Seagate here? Is that possibly the other caller that joined? All right. Well, I guess in their absence, we, we yes.
Yeah, that's the Seagate. I had to figure out how to unmute my phone.
Oh yeah, no worries. All right, good deal. So, do you wanna talk about what you were seeing, or
Yeah,
the issue you found in the documentation?
yeah. I mean, the basic idea here is that we're seeing a lot of customers starting to make issues around the current memory requirements that are documented inside the documents, and it's primarily fueled because of the increasing sizes in the hard drives, capacity of the hard drives. Right, we're going to, we have 16 terabytes right now, and 20s on the horizon, and when you apply the memory requirements as specified in the docs, you literally for a 100 drive system could end up with well over a terabyte and a half of memory requirement,
Yep.
which seems a bit
So,
excessive.
yeah, yeah. So I think your observation is exactly right. Those requirements were probably never real accurate when you looked at the extremes. You know, it doesn't work to run an OSD with like a small, flash drive with, only a couple hundred megabytes of memory, and like
Right.
like you're pointing out here, it's equally absurd to, give each OSD 20 gigs of RAM if you've got a 20 terabyte hard drive.
Right.
Certainly it'll be happy, right? You get lots of cash, which is nice, but
Yeah.
yeah. So
So
um,
I think we were just hoping that we could, if you want us to open a PR or something like that, we can do that about the documentation. Or I saw that you had forwarded that on to Neha, and she was looking into it.
yeah, yeah. So Josh is here too. Josh, I think what we've got there is bad. Is kind of
Yeah,
actively
it's
misleading at
certainly,
this point.
yeah, definitely way out of date, and not what people should be looking at these days. So we definitely need to update the docs.
Yeah.
I put some wording from the email thread into the Etherpad. Um, what would folks think about something along those lines? I'm not married to it by any means, but that was just kind of my kind of high level thought on roughly what we've got.
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, going to something that, did a sort of a per OSD type of recommendation makes sense to us.
Yeah, I think at this point that makes a lot more sense to me as well, considering that the memory usage is pretty constrained with respect to number of PGs, and we have pretty good controls on those these days.
So one thing that I think the intent of what we were maybe originally shooting for was that if you've got a bigger hard drive, you probably have more objects, and with more objects, more cache helps, if that kind of makes sense. It's not really about the size of the hard drive, though, right? It's kind of more the
It's workflow dependent, right? If I have large objects versus small objects.
yeah. Although to be honest, a lot of what we see from the performance perspective is that caching O nodes is kind of more important than anything else. At least, well, it's probably not entirely true with RGW. Although even with RGW, it's still at least partially true. Um,
Yeah.
but O node reads really kind of are crappy for us. So keeping the O node cache in memory is really the one of the most important things. And then things also like the RocksDB indexes and filters and
Right.
OMAP, probably actual real object data kind of is somewhere below that, but maybe still important depending on the actual workload.
Yeah, I think I was mentioning it because of the number of objects, right? The larger objects that I have, the smaller number of objects I will actually have, right? So
Oh,
theoretically, with larger objects, I would need less memory.
yeah, presumably. I in terms of like objects themselves, in an RGW scenario, sorry, not RGW, RBD scenario, right? You have 4 MB objects, but in reality, you might be doing lots of like small I/O to it.
Right.
In which case, you still might want if you've got like a 20 terabyte hard drive and it's like random across that whole thing, you still might have lots of objects. It's just that, you know, they're if your data set's huge and you're doing random I/O across it, in the small
Yeah.
random I/O, you still might need lots of memory cached. Well, anyway, yep. With that wording, does that seem like what's in the Etherpad? Does that seem like it could work for replacing the kind of current wording that we've got? Would people be open to that?
It certainly
It's a
seems.
step in the right.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say the same thing. It's definitely the right direction.
Yeah.
Well, if no one has any objections, I'll just submit a PR to change it if that works.
Okay.
Or
That's
you
good.
can too. That's fine too.
No, go right ahead. It's probably quicker for you to do it.
All right. I will do that then. Working changes. Okay, cool. All right. Anything more on that, guys?
Nope.
All right. Radek, would you want to talk a little bit about some of the performance testing you guys are doing for Crimson? You guys have been working furiously.
Hello. Yes, just a bunch of words. We made Kifo made has made the Ceph the new bot for verifying our PR, the perf check bot. It's basically a Jenkins integration that runs a script to compare master with against a PR that is almost about to match. However, we found during verification, we found that it has some bugs. We addressed them recently, but now we have encountered some increased variance of results we are getting from it. Trying to figure it out, trying to fix that issue. But there is also an offspring of this effort because of the performance testing automation. We had to make a bunch of scripts like the run cbt.sh scripts run cbt.sh in the main Ceph repo. The interesting thing coming from that is that I think we could reuse a lot of this work to automate the performance, the workflow related to performance PRs. At the moment, run cbt.sh got -- classical option. It allows you to run it not only against Crimson, but also against classical OSD, in both cases only with memster as object store implementation, and of course without things like Cephx. I'm working on a script that will be built on top of that will take from you just a name of a branch. We'll find a common part, the last common part with master, and build and run the test on both commits to show one. The most interesting metric for me personally, the number of cycles we are burning to serve a single I/O operation. That's what I'm working on.
Radek, I am trying to run CBT with perf to get that number for you in these tests that I was doing, but I'm not getting any stat. Well, I have the perfstat.pid file, but it's empty. It's just started on Thursday, October 10th, but then it doesn't give me any information.
Inserted nodes don't have perf binary by default. Have you installed it?
Yes, it is there.
Okay. Maybe we'll just log into via SSH and to sniff around. Which inserter it is?
01.
01. Okay.
Yeah. We can talk about it more outside of the performance meeting. But
sure. I'm available on IRC. Let's nail the issue.
Cool. So let's see. Next on the list, I wanted to give folks an update on our new test nodes that Intel has donated for the community. First, these things are really, really fast, so that's super exciting. I'm I'm a little bit like a kid in a candy store right now, trying to get an idea of what what we see on them and what we can do with them. We still are working on trying to get the bonding set up for the network adapters working right. Our IT folks have been playing around with the switch to get the bonding setup modified for our environment, but for some reason we still are a little slow. Well, more than a little, I guess. We're not really doing any better than any single 25 gigabit link, so we still have some work to do there. But in the meantime, I've been looking at just single OSD performance testing on these. A couple of takeaways, early takeaways on these is that switching from the performance throughput to the performance latency tuned profile is showing a really big improvement. We saw that in CERTA as well, but it's really important on these ones. I suspect that is primarily due to C and or P state switching being reduced. That I think the performance latency profile keeps everything in either C0 or C1. I don't remember exactly what the differences between those are in modern kernels either. There was a lot of kind of changing going on there at one point. But in any event, it's showing a big improvement. So that's interesting and kind of maybe also showcases or kind of verifies a bunch of the work that Nick Fisk was doing like a year or two ago, where he was looking at this and seeing a big improvement. So that was one thing. And then the other thing that was very interesting is that at least with RBD testing, a 4K min alloc size was proving to be significantly faster than a 16K min alloc size. I don't know entirely why yet, if that's primarily due to the reduced amount of data that's going into the write-ahead log, or if it's the different code path in BlueStore, or potentially some other effect. But whereas on our older inserta nodes, it's kind of a wash. Here for primarily for 4K random writes in RBD, it's a big improvement. I think it was between 25 and 30%. So Igor, I don't know if you've still been doing any 4K min-alloc testing in your setup, but at least here it looks like it's a really big win.
Well, I'm planning to come back to this research, but yeah, it's very surprising that new Intel nodes are benefit that much from this. Well, no ideas why it's happening.
I do remember that the SanDisk guys, back when they were doing a lot of BlueStore work, I think were saying that in some cases they were seeing performance improvement with 4K min-alloc, but they were also trying to write their own like key value store, and they had other requirements too, so that might have been kind of unrelated to whatever we're seeing here.
Well, I have plans to select my FIO test cases against standalone BlueStore and check what's happening with 4K random writes there on the hardware I have, and well, maybe we'll see something there.
Sure.
That's interesting indeed.
The last thing I had here, well, actually, no, I'll take that back. An additional thing that I've got here is that doing some RocksDB tuning regarding the number of write-ahead log buffers, number of buffers, the compaction style, switching to universal compaction, all seem to have some effect on this as well. Although it was a smaller effect than what we were seeing from the first two. Once all of that was done, both using just the NVMe drives in the new nodes and using the Optane drive for the database and wall ended up in both cases it was performance was higher than on the Incerta nodes. Although so far I'm not seeing a really huge difference between NVMe and Optane, but I think that's probably due more to bottlenecks in the Ceph code itself and CPU limitations rather than, they're not really actually being any difference here in terms of what the devices themselves are capable of. So I think we have more work to do. CPU usage was very high. I think I was using 12 cores for one OSD in these tests. So performance is pretty good, but CPU usage is very high. So that's something we got to work on.
Well, Mark, regarding you mentioned you don't see much performance increase for new. It might make sense to try this standalone BlueStore benchmarking using FIO rather than using the full OSD stack, just to check how good they are, how good BlueStore.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
implicitly estimate overhead that OSD code implies.
Yeah, so that is interesting. That's a good point. I have a suspicion that we are really hitting limitations in how fast RocksDB can ingest all of the data that we're throwing at it. It doesn't look like, well, the fact that switching to a 4K min alloc size from 16K improves performance significantly. And then the fact that putting RocksDB on an Optane drive versus just on the shared NVMe drive doesn't seem to change much. Makes me think that the ingest rate into the write-ahead log is really a limiting factor. Could be wrong, but that's kind of my current running theory. And I suppose if we use the FIO object store tool or the BlueStore thing, that then we would not be doing PG log updates, right? It'd just be BlueStore.
Well, we can simulate some database traffic using FIO, but there would be no logs. All that stuff.
So I suppose, yeah, if we saw a significantly different result, that would maybe then be interesting.
Well, what might limit us in BlueStore is this single thread which performs all the AV access. So, well, changing from NVMe, shared NVMe to Optane might be limited by this. Well, definitely by CPU. So by this single core which handles all the transactions, which puts them into KV.
Yeah, I did do some Walcott profiling, and the KV sync thread definitely was pretty busy. But it's always pretty busy. But in this case, it was quite busy. So that's not a terrible hypothesis. So in addition, while I've been doing this testing, I also looked at Adam's sharding PR, and both in the context of RBD and then also just very recently in the context of RGW. and the performance is not really any different. It may even be a little bit slower in a couple of tests, but not in a major way. Pretty minor differences, and it's noisy enough that it's kind of hard to tell sometimes. But having said that, at least when I looked at the compaction stats from the RBD tests, it was very, very the overhead was much, much lower. We were spending far less time in compaction, and the total amount of data being compacted was way less. I have not looked at those results from the RGW test, but I would expect the same thing. So I guess the gist of it is that in all of the tests that I ran, I did not see any real performance gains from it, but we may, as a result of this, have in general, lower time in compaction, and if a cluster in particular is limited, the throughput is limited by backing up compaction, then that might improve that dramatically, and also increase the life of the NVMe or SSD drives that are being used for the database. So a big win in terms of a variety of things, but maybe not necessarily a big performance win if you're not compaction limited. And that's what I've got so far on that. But looking at those as well.
And Mark, we have persistent memory on these new nodes, right?
We have the Optane NVMe cards, but we do not yet have Optane DIMMs on them.
So it can't work in memory mode when there's storage.
I don't.
RAM.
Yeah, I don't think the Optane, the NVMe style Optane drives are byte addressable or can use any of the PMM style interfaces. Orlando, are you around? Is that correct?
Yeah. Hey, Mark, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, could you repeat that again?
I don't think that the NVMe style Optane drives are byte addressable, right?
No.
Only the
Only
DIMM form
the
factor.
DIMM factor. Yeah, that's correct.
But I recall that Tushar mentioned that the Falcon that these nodes have persistent memory stuff. Maybe makes sense to.
The nodes have the capability to run Optane persistent memory style DIMMs. But I think what you have, Mark, is just the NVMe form factor.
Yeah, that's my understanding too. We talked about it last spring, but I think the thought was that we could upgrade them at a later date once you guys had them kind of in channel and everything.
I see. Okay.
So yeah, unfortunately, Igor, we don't have any of the DIMM form factor memory yet, but
yeah,
hopefully we can get it. So that's basically all I've got. Anyone else have anything this week they'd like to talk about?
If we could give a little update on like our situation from a couple weeks ago.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, yeah, I forgot about that. Go ahead.
No problem. So we were seeing so remind everybody, we're running Ceph 14.2.4 in a Kubernetes environment with Rook, and we're seeing crashes of our RGWs intermittently. And we have been able to get some core dumps, and they definitely the backtrace on the core dump. Some of them match the issue that was pointed out, a read issue 39660. which looks like there's not a fix for, and there's not a backtrace for the put or write issue that someone pointed out might be issue 41264. But our behavior seems to match kind of the description in that ticket. So I think we're seeing that one also. And that issue, at least, I think, at least in the, it looks like it's in master, but it hasn't been released yet. The one in 41264, and the other one still seems open. So just kind of like to understand the any updates on those. And also today we noticed, or yesterday and today we noticed when our RGWs crash, in Kubernetes, they restart. But we definitely saw actually deleting the pods and getting it fresh instead of it just a restart inside the pod seemed to get it in a much better state. So it's also interesting that perhaps that on a pod restart, something is not cleaning up with the kind of crashes we're seeing, or at least that's a hypothesis.
And we've actually talked about, sadly, maybe doing a nightly restart of our RGWs one at a time or something, just to try and get them into a better state. Not ideal, obviously, but when we saw the dramatic improvement in performance upon doing a hard restart on each pod, it made us say, well, maybe that's for now until this kind of gets solved. Maybe it's a practice we start just to try to keep ourselves a little healthier.
So I linked those bugs in the chat. Is that correct? Are those what you were referencing?
I don't have. We're just on the phone. So,
oh, whoops, sorry. Yep. Sure.
39660 and 41264 as issue tracker in the issue tracker.
Yep. Okay. Yep. That's why I linked. I saw on 39660 that Casey had marked it as duplicated by 41511, where it was like 100% CPU usage by civil
we
web
do now
threads.
have a fix for that one.
We definitely, our core dumps are more on the put right side than the read one there, but we are seeing both. But we're seeing, maybe if I had a rough guess, more like 80% are on the put right side, and maybe 20% of the core dumps are matching the one that's in that 39660. So the right side, if that's been fixed and just needs to be released to the next version, is there any like 14.2.5 schedule, or would that be in the 14.2.5 release when that does happen?
I'm afraid I don't know.
It's very likely that both will make the next one, but I don't know the schedule for it.
And do you at least know part of your release process? Because we're in Kubernetes, we rely on the Ceph Docker official images. Does that actually come out as part of the release process, or is that kind of lag behind? We were just kind of curious, like, is it actually part of the official release process?
Good question.
If not, could it
Docker.
be?
I don't even know who does the Ceph Docker images. Does anyone know? Is that is it? Sorry, I'm looking it up on GitHub right now to see who's been doing commits. Well, Dan's been doing some work in that. So has Sebastian. Maybe Sebastian would be the right person to talk to. Sebastian Hahn?
I mean, is it like is the 14.25? Is that you think that's like a month away, 3 months away? Any like magic crystal ball to know, or?
Let's see. I'm just going and looking at the releases page to try to get an idea of how often these things have been coming out. Here's the release schedule, and we don't have a 14.25 on there, but it looked to me like 14.21 came out in April, 14.22 came out in July, then 2.3 and 2.4 came out in September. So I mean, I guess I would assume in the next month here, maybe we'd see a 14.25, but I don't know. Josh, do you know, is Sage usually the one that ultimately kind of decides if we need one, or is it Alfredo?
I mean,
I've
we
seen.
may be able to test if someone makes a master Docker image off master. We could probably test something if it's fixed in master. If that's something that might be done as not an official release, but kind of something we could test with. If you just took the current master snapshot and made a Docker image, that's something that's possible.
Yeah, we could probably check with Dan or Sebastian or whoever's making the container images and see if we can test a fix that way. It seems like this issue is affecting a bunch of folks, so that would probably speed up the timeline for 14.25 if we wanted, so we could get these kind of fixes out sooner. Is there a known fix for this one yet, or is it still being investigated?
There is a fix, yeah.
Okay.
Cool. So let's see. Casey and Josh or Brett, what's the right process to find out kind of who is doing the Ceph Docker images and how they get released with our releases?
Ask Ken.
Ken? Okay.
Yep.
So Ken Dreyer is maybe the right guy to follow up with on this. Let's see. I can maybe. Would you guys would you mind emailing me and I'll maybe get a thread going on that just so that we can make sure this doesn't fall off the radar.
What's your email address?
I was gonna put it in the chat, but that won't help you guys.
Is the chat available? Is the chat available afterwards? I mean, I could look.
Yeah, I mean, I could put it in the thing here, but it's pretty easy. It's just mnelson@redhat.com.
Awesome.
Yeah, we'll definitely reach out. We appreciate it.
Cool. Yeah, I'm afraid I can't help you much, but I can at least connect you with Ken, and then maybe that will.
That's great. That sounds great. I really appreciate it.
And then this is one other piece of feedback. Maybe this isn't the right forum for it. We did try to actually put in our own bug, and I'm a little embarrassed to say we had no luck trying to get the authentication that you all use for your bug track or whatever it's called, the issue tracker. I created an account. The account got approved, but when I try to use whatever the
OpenID
or OpenID, I try to link it to my Gmail account and so forth, and no matter what I try to do, it would not let me in. So I don't know if there was some magic there I'm missing, but I followed the directions and it just didn't seem to help. So I didn't know if there's any somewhere you can point us. So, we felt bad. We wanted to actually document, although I think it is the existing issues. We just had no luck actually getting onto the system, unfortunately.
Okay, yeah, I have no idea. I've had my tracker account for like 8 years, so
Gotcha.
I'm not sure what the new what kind of crazy, stuff.
Yeah, just maybe just some feedback, I guess. If there is someone out there that has documentation, I know it sounds weird, but we had no luck.
I mean, you have to do some two-factor tied to a Gmail account or some other verified email account that's consistent with, I think it's called OpenID, and it just wasn't really working.
So just
Holy
feedback.
smokes.
Again,
Okay.
not a big deal.
Yeah.
We didn't want you to think that we were shirking our duty of documenting, at least. We did try.
Oh, yeah. No worries. Yeah, I'm not sure if David Galloway is the one that, or if someone else from that team is. Well, I'll document it in the Etherpad here. Not that will do much good, but at least maybe then it'll be noted somewhere.
At least it's been noted.
Yes.
And again, we really appreciate all the help, and we'll definitely reach out to you to follow up on the Docker conversation. We really appreciate it.
No worries. And then, okay. I threw it in the Etherpad here, and if I can figure out who the right person is to send that to, I will pass it along. All right. Well, then, yes, I will look for your email regarding Ceph Docker stuff, and then I will try to get you guys connected with Ken and maybe, if necessary, other folks on that team, and then we can go from there.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Cool. All right. Any other last minute things from anybody? Oh, then have a good week, everyone.
Thanks.
See you
Same
later.
for you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.